We'll do a review of Likutei Sichos in Chelek Yud-Ches. This is the fourth Sicha of Parshas Naso. It's a Rashi Sicha. The Rebbe is going to explain in detail the Rashi of Birchas Kahanim. The pasuk says Omer Lahem. There's 3 Dibur Hamaschils in Omer Lahem. Rashi explains each one, and the Seder in Rashi and different diyukim as we will see inside. We're learning the Sicha. Lil Nishmas, or Rabbi Chosid, or Rabbi Tomim, or Rabbi Menachem Mendel, Ben Meir Yaakov, who passed away in a very young age, and we're learning it Lil Nishmosei, and also for the Refuah Shlema for Golda Rechel Bas Sarah Naomi. Aleph. So let's look inside. By the Tzivui of Birchas Kahanim, by the command where Hashem says to bless, that the Kohanim should bless. So the pasuk states, "Koish Baruch Hu es Bnei Yisrael Omer Lahem." So you shall bless the Bnei Yisrael. Say to them, Omer Lahem. Is Rashi mefarish the verter Omer Lahem? So Rashi explains the words Omer Lahem. Kimoi Zocher Shomer Belaz Dishant. As we'll see, one would expect this is a command for the Kohanim to bless. You should say, instead of Omer Lahem, you should say Emer with a segol, which would mean a command. Why does it say Omer? Rashi brings other examples, what also says with a comment, it means a command. Kimoi Zocher Shomer Belaz Dishant, as the Rebbe will explain Barichas. Then the next Rashi, again, puts the heading from the Pasuk Omer Lahem, and Rashi says, explains Sheyu Kulam Shoim. They should all be listening when the Kohen says it, as also the Rebbe will explain this Rashi. And finally, Rashi also brings down another time from the Pasuk Omer, and it says Omer is Moli. This way it's spelled Omer, Aleph Mem Vav Reish versus Aleph Mem Reish with a Vav, which is a Moli, a full. So that means it's interpreted that Lois Vorchem B'chipoznu B'holus, don't bless them in a hasty way, in an exciting way, but with kavona and with a full heart. And all these lashonis, what exactly it means. What is the chipazon, bahola, and what is the kavanah le'shalom? The Rebbe is going to explain. But first, Rashi explains 3 times the words Omer Lahem. The third time in Rashi explains just the word Omer. He just quotes Omer. Normally, it would seem that the word Omer should be explained first, because that is only explaining the word Omer, and then Rashi should explain the other 2 Omer Lahem. But here, Rashi first explains 2 Omer Lahems, and then Rashi goes to Omer, which tells us that this need for this last Rashi Omer gives us a clue that is only after the 2, before the 2 Omer's interpretation. Then we also have to interpret what it means Omer. For them was by Yedin for the Drei Perushim. Is Rashi mighty from Pasuk? The fact that from these 3 interpretations, the commentary is Rashi requotes again from the Pasuk. Zweimal Omer Lem, twice Rashi requotes the words Omer Lem, un einmal Omer, once Omer, is Muchach, so that is evident that Yeder Pirush, that each commentary is Masbir Abazun, that Inyan in the Mlosh Namutuk is explaining a different aspect in what in the language that is being quoted, which means that there are different Rashis and there are different parts of the pasuk or ideas that we don't understand. That's why we're re-quoting them. So we need, however, understand about as in the Erste Zwei Dibur HaMaschil, since in the 2 Rashis, the first Rashis that open is a Mefarish Oichdom Vort Lohem. Rashi says Omer Lohem. That means he's interpreting not just the word Omer, but Omer Lohem, the 2 words together. On in Dritten Dibur HaMaschil, and the third quote from the pasuk is a Mefarish Nordem Vort Omer, just the word Omer alone. But the Rashi gedacht Martik sein dem dritten Pirush. Rashi seemingly should have introduced first the Third interpretation, Omer Molichulu. This is what he says, that Omer is full with the Vav, before the two Perushim. From them, Gufa is moving. So from this itself is understood. As Choch Yeder Pirush is an inyan b'fnei atzmai, although that each commentary is its own matter, in them say there, yet they need to come in this order. The order needs to be the first two commentaries and then the third commentary, even though the third commentary is only explaining the Omer, the first word alone, because the Schwierigkeit was very bavoren with dritten Pirush, because the difficulty that Rashi is answering with his third commentary comes specifically after the two previous commentaries. Base. Now we're going to see the Rashis themselves, each one. We're going to explain the first Rashi, the second Rashi, and the third Rashi. The ersten Pirush von Rashi, ki mezocher shomer. What does Rashi mean, zocher shomer? Zan mefarshim masbid. So mefarshim explain, Rashi bavornt, the Schwierigkeit in the word Omer. Rashi is answering over here the difficulty that we have in the word Omer. Was is nit beloshon tzivui. It's not in a language of command, which would be emor, nor beloshon hoive, but in a loshon of present. Say, oder mocker, or the language of the source of the word Omer. The aleph is nit mit a segel. The aleph is not with a segel emor, or you could say imru, loshon with a chirik if it's imru. Or the mitachirik b'toisus vav zum sov word, or there's mitachirik and there's additional vav at the end of the word, would be imru. So that would be a comment. Nor mitakometz. This is with a kometz. So here we have two meforshim explaining what does the pasuk mean. What does Rashi mean when Rashi says zocher shomer? Either Rashi is, some meforshim say that in this case it's takenat tzivu because it says omer with a kometz. And Rashi brings proof to that from Zocher v'Shomer, or according to other Mefarshim, which is the opposite, that over here it's also a Loshen Tzivu, even though it says with a comma, it's not with a segel, just like Zocher v'Shomer. So they conclude differently whether it means here a Tzivu or not, because the Raya, the Rashi brings what it means. It's Rashi Mevayah, so Rashi explains it. So Lord give you some Mefarshim according to certain commentators. As Emor is not taken, it gets tzivui. That over here is taken not at tzivui. It doesn't say Emor, it says Omer. Not a Loshen Haiva. This is actually Loshen Haiva. In those is Nitke Islam. This is not an exception. How could this be? Because those is Zocher and Shomer. This is just like Zocher and Shomer. Over there was Loshen Haiva. When it's come b'mokoim tzivui. So when it comes in this place, it's not a directly a zchoir or shmoir would be the, it says zocher shomer. So in that case, when it comes in the place of the set of a tzivui, weist as the amida dav zayin tomid. So that means that it's a constant one. So it's not a command. Zocher, always remember, always keep. Rashi by zocher, as Rashi explained earlier, when it says zocher. We should always remember what that's why it says Zocher. So that's according to some Mefarshim. Other Mefarshim learn Ober. Other Mefarshim, they learn, however, the other way around. As Agam, Omer mitakometz is nitke loshen tzivu, even though it's not a language of command. Is does der moker? That's the root of the word speak, Omer. And Rashi zogt al derech hanal, and Rashi says, similar to the Torah uses in the language of tzivui, a loshen of moker, as mikvit in the Torah, the moker oich by Atzivui, that you find that the word is used in the word as a mocker, like shomer, the mocker of the word shmira, and zocher, the word zchira, using the mocker by a tzibui. So even though they're also a mocker, the source of the word, and yet it means a tzibui. So these are the two ways to interpret what Rashi means. According to this, all it's difficult. In addition to other difficulties, the Rashi touched up northern word Omer, since Rashi is only translating what the meaning of Omer. So why does he also quote Lohem? Why does he have to quote for the pasuk Lohem? Is a simon that Rashi is dealing here with the Omer Lohem, as the Rebbe will explain. Why is Rashi bringing two examples? Zocher und Shomer, which is not genug, and why isn't it sufficient? The dogma from Zocher allein, other from Shomer allein, just to bring down the one of them, Zocher, other Shomer. Why does Rashi have to bring down two dogmas? That's the first Rashi. Now the second Rashi, Gimel. In the zweiten Pirush for Rashi, the second commentary of Rashi, Emer lahem sheyu kulam shem. They should all say to them, they should all be listening. So the question is, what's going on over here? First of all, the quote, but why would you do it for yourself? And Rashi is sort of short-handed over here. It's short. Look inside. In Zweiten Pirush Rashi, is Emer lahem sheyu kulam shem. They should all be listening. Is b'pashtus the kavanah b'mefarshim taishim. What does it mean simply, as mefarshim translated? Amazon it meinen. Now one shouldn't think as the kohen can zog the brichas kahanim, ben atzme that the kohen can say the blessing of the kahanim by himself without having the kahanim here. Aval piyaz a kol that did had. That's going to be in a way that the community, the call, is not going to hear. Or shedar zayin emor lahem. You have to speak to them. They should all be listening. Isn't it move on? So it's not understood. Aleph. If Rashi's limud is from word lahem, if Rashi's learning this from because it says lahem, that means they should all be listening. Dafanish mighty sein dem word amoir. So Rashi doesn't have to quote, to just explain, make the heading, the quote from the pasuk. The Rashi brings lahem. Und ob der Reihe von Rashi ist euch vom Wort Omer, if Rashi's proof is also from Omer, as the Amira darf sein in an Eufen von Zukommen, Lohem, that it needs to come, the Amira needs to come to them, but this is L'choyre mer bestaber. It's not so much to say that they have to hear, but that he has to be, the Kohen has to be saying it, that they should hear. As the Amira darf sein in an Eufen von Zukommen Lohem, the Amida needs to be in such a way that it should reach them, Omoir Lohem to them. But this is something more logical. It's fitting more to the content of the verse. But the Amida from the Kohanim, because we're discussing here what the Kohanim are saying, we're not talking here about what the Bnei Yisrael are listening. We're talking about what they have to say. But Rashi, Losh, Kedar, Zayin, Behesim to them. So Rashi's Lashon should have fit in. Instead of saying Shoymim, they should all be listening. So should discuss, should be an allowed voice, not so much about the listeners, because the point here is the sayer should say it loud. Why does Rashi say that should all be listening? One question. Number two, base, the Baal does Rashi made Shelo Zayin. Since Rashi is meaning is to reject that as the brachas only zayin beinam lebein atzmo, it should not be between themselves. What people should hear to is shouldn't be bein themselves. Rashi need befedish. How come Rashi doesn't say this openly? Be at his shoylel umfarish and vaytir the pirush, just like he says in the later pirush, what not to do, loyte vorchem b'chipaz and chulu, not quickly. Rashi should have said there steht in Gemara that Leute vorchem leben atzma. The Gemara uses this language. Rashi says sheyikulim shemim, but Rashi should have said what not to do. We stating Gemara, since we see that even in this Sifri and the Gemara, but those is Mishnah. This is for a 10-year-old which is learning Mishnah already. And even more Ben Chamash the Gemara, a 50-year-old which is learning Gemara. So over there, Daf and Oistaichun. So over there, the need to translate Ados Maintenance. When it says Omar Lehem, is only bench Beinom Leba'ana Atzmam, or the Balach is not to bench them, say the Birchs Kahanim, between by yourself, or in a silent way. That is the Rashi about the Oistaichun Befeder. So for Rashi, for sure, should translate it, articulate this very specifically for a 5-year-old who's learning Chumash, that it means instead of saying Sheikulim Shemim, he shouldn't say it Beinon V'Natzmei, or he shouldn't say it Belachash. Favos number 3. Favos Zokter the Mloshon Kulam Shemim. This is should all be listening. Who's the Kulam Shem should all be listening? On Chodsh, you're going to say, what do you mean? It says in the pasuk, Chodsh does come b'hamshel from Lashon HaPasuk. Although this comes as a follow-up from the language of the pasuk, Koshe Baruch Hu es Bnei Yisrael Amar Lahem. So you should bench Bnei Yisrael, say to them, Mein doch dos nit alle Bnei Yisrael b'chol mokim. So this does not really refer to that all Bnei Yisrael in all places, nor the Eden Beis Shemayim. We're talking about the Kohanim with the blessing. They should be everybody. So it should be the call. We're not talking about the Klal Yisrael, what the pasuk is talking about. But given mer masim, it would be seem more fitting when Rashi talked about that of Lashon Sifri. You should use it similar to the language of Sifri. Sheyeh kol hakol. That they call those the Zusammengeklebene, those who are gathered, Shemea, Ukiyotzebeter. Instead of saying Kulam, to say that the call should be Shemea Ukiyotzebeter. That's the question on the second Rashi. The third Rashi is Dalet, the dritten Pirush, Omer Moli. That Omer is full with a vav. So it says, Leitevarchem Bechipazen Ube Baholus, Lebekavona Beliv Shalom. Don't bench them in a hasty way. In a confusing, in a beholodic way, in a confusing way, but with intent and with a complete heart. So we need to understand Aleph. We had already spoken many times, is the shinui for moli v'choser nitkin kushim pshutei shel mikra. This change when sometimes the pasuk has an extra vav, sometimes there is without a vav, that same word, it's not a question in pshutei shel mikra. That in the simple meaning, it's not a problem. But Rashi Rashi would have to answer it. Rashi answers all things that are difficult in the pasuk, but the Mola and Chos is not one of those things because most of the time Rashi doesn't address it. But on the contrary, not only don't we need to address this, but the Ruba from Verter B'Chumash, most of the cases from the words of the Chumash was signed and Mola the Chos, which are either full or lacking. Rashi does not stop on that and explain that. Unless there's a difficulty in the simple pshat of the pasuk. Which gets answered or gets addressed through the Mola the Choser. So we need to understand. What is not smooth in our simple meaning of the pasuk was the molekum tesfarenteren, that the extra mole is coming to answer it. Number 2 base. Why should there even be a thought, as the Kohanim all mentioned, why would one think that they should mention him in such a way, in a hasty, in a behol, in a confusing way? Amazon those dafim bavornen that you should need to caution to say they shouldn't. Why would you think that they would? In the Medrash states, Amal HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Kohanim, Shem says to Kohanim, Lo mipnei shamarti lachem shetim mevarich es Yisrael, not just because I told you that you should be benching the Yidden, to you mevarich moisa b'angaria u'bebaholus, that you should bless them with angaria and beholus. And agari is in a hasty kind of a way, and in a confusing kind of way. But you should bench them with intent of the heart. Because the Pirush portion then is, what is the simple meaning? And what the Midrash says, as explained by the commentators. As about as the Reibish the Kohanim, since Hashem passed it along to the Kohanim, as they zone mentioned the Yidden that they should bench, they should bless the Yidden. They will do it by a rush and by yelling. And the Rebbe brings down from the Ha'ara Matnas Kahuna, it's like a master who speaks and instructs his servant to do his work and his malacha, that he does it very quickly. It's about the Kanob and Zogen, it's unfortunate on Madu, Bald as the Abish to Tibigab, the Kanob so mentioned didn't, well, the Stonduk Mehirus Vagora. The Kanob and Zogen are those main door Rashi. You can't say that this is what Rashi means. When damals wollte dog gesagt in klare Werte, then Rashi would have said this very clearly. Which is moving bepashtus, and it's understood. Simply, why Rashi doesn't think so? Why this doesn't fit the simple meaning of the pasuk? Because we already learned the instructions. Love your friend like yourself. Is punkt wieder kohen will. As Mishas benched him, just as the Kohen wants, that when you are benching the Kohen, is all as I need, it shouldn't be in a haste chulu, nor bechavonu believe shalom, but with intent and with a complete heart. So that's the way it's for sure going to be when he blesses you. So why would we even think that the Kohen is going to bench it in a quick way, in a hasty way, begorer? Can't say that. Why do you think it's going to be quickly in the Behola? Is Bibal that the Yisrael Hashem is telling them to bless the Eden. They will become confused from this command because is noitic. So if it's important to instruct. As the Meibish Zatziv, when the Meibish command, Zolnit Arushrufen came Baholo should not bring out this confusion, the Chulu, but does the Torah get up by the first mitzvah? The Torah should have questioned it right by the first mitzvah, not by the Birchas Kahanim. If a mitzvah of the Meibish can bring about the level of Baholo, so why does the Torah bring it down over here in the Parashas Naso by Birchas Kahanim? Torah should have told by the first mitzvahs, was the Meibish talking Gizok. Parshas boy b'chulu. When the Eibush had told him the Parshas boy should have told, don't do the mitzvah of Behola, nicht erst by the mitzvah of Birchas Kohen and Parshas Naso, and not just by the mitzvah in Parshas Naso. Gimel, was is Rashi ois mit sein Diuk zu sagen beide Lashonis? What does Rashi mean with his using the two languages bebechapozen ubebeholus? What does it mean, the two? Hasty and confusing. Where does it take this? Where does it say this in the pasuk? These two, number 4, Dalet. Al-Derech Zeh is the Shaila b'Nigeya to the Tzvei L'Shonos for Rashi and Tzadachil. Same thing is the two languages Rashi uses the positive how you should mention. So Rashi says b'kavonu b'leiv shalom, with intent, with a complete heart. Befrat. So why would Rashi say these two languages? Where does he know it from? What does it mean exactly? Befrat as the Medrash Teitake nor in Loshem. And in the Medrash it actually says only one language. It says b'kavonu saleh. So now the Rebbe explains all the above. The Rebbe explains first that the reason by the Amor Lahem, the first Rashi, that is Zocher v'Shomer, that is because it says Amor Lahem to them, that tells us it's a Lashon Tzivu, not Mokar. If it would have just said Amor, that's where Rashi quotes both of them. Amor Lahem. If Amor would have been not a Lashon Tzivu, then it doesn't fit to say Lahem. Hey, the beer v'chol hanal. The explanation of all the above. The hechrech from Rashi. Rashi, what forces Rashi? How does Rashi know? As the Pirush from Omer is Kemoy Zocher v'Shomer, meaning of Omer is like Zocher v'Shomer, is from them was the Pasuk Zok Omer Lohem. The Far is a mighty Werter. That's what Rashi quotes both words from the Pasuk. Then, as Volt gestan the Lashon Koyse Baruch Hu Bnei Yisrael Omer, if the Pasuk would have just said, then the Bnei Yisrael say, Yivarech Hashem, Volt Megillah the Pashtus, then we would have learned simply, as Omer is not Kitzivui, Omer is not a command, nor a Lashon Moker is a Lashon of the Moker, and the Pirush of Pasuk will given. Now, that meaning of the pasuk would have been, "Azoi zolted bench Eden," so you shall bench the Eden, saying Zogendik, saying Yivarech Achol. About Obera state Omer Lahem, say to them Lahem is as a signal for Tzivui al derech. This is a style of a command similar to said Loi Yitame Lahem. As free, we just learned that he is not allowed to be metame to them. The Kamakietzim, many like them. So the lohem makes it into instruction. But then the question raises why does it say in the language of a mocker with a comets? Why does it say in such a way? Aloshon moker on aloshon tzivui avapaula. If you use the language of the moker and a language of a command to do something, an act, these are two separate matters. But moker is shoylali, the source rejects the appeal. It's not doing. It's the source of the word, but it's not. Say it's not an act telling you to do something. Rashi. This Rashi answers that even though it's a command for deswegen and yet he could stand in the language of Moker, Omer mit hakometz, k'moy zocher shomer, like zocher shomer. Punkt wie bei zocher and shomer, just as by zocher and shomer is there mekuva, not tzivui. The intent is a command. Udoch steht das b'lashon Moker, and still it uses the language of Moker. The farva does because it points to a constant matter that is always. The Rashi is not mefarish, as Rashi says that you should always remember. Quoted before, same thing is when the pasuk is Amar Lahem. It's said in the language of a mocker mitzad them because it is constant. What does it mean that it's constant? So that's why Rashi brings Zocher v'Shomer, the two psukim, because in this way, the constant over here is not, you're not always benching the Kohanim. The constant over here is on a regular basis versus on all the time. Why Rashi needs to have both proofs, Sai from Zocher, Sai from Shomer, both from Zocher and Shomer. The raya from Zocher alone is not genug. The proof from Zocher isn't sufficient. Or Bishleima by Zocher is masim aloshon moker. It makes fitting by the language of Zocher that we should use the language of moker in the place to command. Because you have to be always remembering. The Rashi says, you should put your heart to always remember. Remember the Shabbos all the time, but Rashi made the pulas as chida bepoyel. Rashi doesn't mean that you have to mention Shabbos or in actuality, nor the Nesina slave but it's just to pay your heart to always remember. It should always be on your heart, but not actually doing an act of remembering. So then it's not limited to any specific time. So therefore it's always Zocher. In the tzivur from Omer Lahem, as opposed to the command of Omer Lahem, because Kohanim, I'm not talking. The blessing of the Kohanim is not this to talk about all the time. There's set times in the year during the Yom Tovim, Even if you're going to say that based on the Pshuta Shemikra Daf Zayin Birchas Kohanim, you have to talk to the Kohen and have to bless every day. He says the fortnit merve einmal in tog. It's not. It's only one time a day. Unit in azayfen to be by zocher. It's not like constant like by zocher, which is all the time. So over there it says b'loshen moker to tell you all the time. But here, why would it say it's not all the time? It's once a day, maximum once a day, or it's just only the Yom Tov. The Rebbe bringt Rashi the Raya Euch von Shomer. Was von dem was Rashi sagt, passt zocher Shomer. One after the other, and is the Tzayin, welche meint, which Shomer he means, is Muchar, is evidence of it says to the Lashonis, Zocher Shomer, to the word Zocher Shomer, was much gelernt, was so much zwischen sich. The Psukim of Shomer and Zocher that we already learned, they have a connection. And this is the Zocher v'Shomer by Shabbos. That's when we say to remember Shabbos and keep Shabbos. Shmiras Shabbos, so if we're talking about Smash by Shomer of keeping Shabbos, is not keep Ula v'Inyan Tmidi. It's not, don't keep Shabbos all the time. Those are the Shaykhs not to Yom Shabbos. You can only keep Shabbos on Shabbos. And yet the command uses Lashon HaMokar of Shomer, not Shemoyer, but Shomer. Mitakomatz. Was weißt von Inyan Tmidi, which shows a constant, is from them Araya. So from them is a proof that that also an act and an idea was men tut nit the whole ace. You don't do it all the time. But since it's done in a constant way, in Zmanim Kibuyim, in set times, past it, then Loshen Moker, then it's fitting to use the language of Moker. Okay, so why doesn't Rashi just bring Shomer? Why does it need Zocher? But the Raya for Shomer Alein is noch weniger Raya for Zocher. But it's even less proof, the Shomer, to our Pasuk over here. Omer is less proof from the word Shomer, and even less than Zocher. Or Shmira Shabbos is noch nit keeping Shabbos is not an act of doing a positive, nor Shalila. It is not, it's negating of not doing. So then one could argue, as Dafke dort past the Loshem Moker, that when you're talking about Shalila, over there the Loshem Moker is fitting. Al Chodj der Kiyum von Shomer is in Azman Mesuyim, the Yom HaShabbos Dafke, that because even though you're observing Shomer is only on Yom HaShabbos, is over the Teichen Shlili von Shomer, but that idea of not doing Farah B'chol Reka from the Mizman in Shabbos, every instant is don't do Nochmer. Eich b'mei HaShavua, Eich b'avidos b'mei HaChoel is Adit B'chal Shabbos. Even during the weekday, when you're working, you're not B'chal Shabbos. Shomer, you're always not desecrating the Shabbos. You're guarding the Shabbos not to desecrate it. You're never desecrating the Shabbos. Even though you're doing it in the weekday, you're not desecrating the Shabbos. The Riber is the Erstone Ikeraya for Zocher. That, remember, was that Nuach Yuvis, that's a movement of positive. For Gedenken, that is to do something. Memela is as nitin as it's not as constant as the not doing from the Shomer. Is that Sivu B'Loshen Moker, and still it's in a language of Moker, so we see that in not you can still use Moker. So Derech Zeh is moving by Omer Lehem, so the same thing by Omer Lehem. Chosh the Pe'ula from Birchas Kahanim is nit keninyan tmidi, even though it's not a constant. But Bizman Mesuyim, it's only on a certain time. When the Kohanim blesses you, since it has a permanent set in time, it's always done at that time, whatever time it is. Whether it's set times in the year or the Yedin Tog or every day, past them Loshen Moker, it fits on that the language of a Moker was Weistav Timidius, which points to constant. Similar to what we find in the language of Tomid by the Menorah. To leave them that lahalis ner tomid, although you light it every night time, to lead them was it gebrennt b'chol laila. Because every night it was burning. It didn't burn all night. It didn't burn for 24 hours, but it burnt. Right? So every night it burned. It's called Tamid. So here, every Birchas Kohanim, and that's why it's just like the Shomer, the Zocher, which is an act, a Tenuah Chiyuvis, and it's done once a week on the Shabbos. And this year, whenever it's done, whether it's every morning, every day, it fits to say Omer. Zion. If you say Shvarz Verstehen, but according to this, it's difficult to understand. Aleph. Since Torah doesn't tell you when the time is, it just says all the time. So why is it added by these words after it says already the command you shall bless the Bnei Yisrael? What is added by saying Amar Lahem, say to them on a regular basis, but we're not telling you when those regular bases are. So the Torah is so pledged to Bnei Yisrael, and that's it. Why Omer Lahem? And it's difficult to say. Maybe the person wouldn't say Omer Lahem, it wouldn't be interpreted as a command, it would just be optional. So that's not, it's difficult to answer. But the Torah adds the words Omer Lahem so that you don't say, if it would have said, so you shall bless the Bnei Yisrael, but you can't touch it, then mistakenly you could have translated it. You could think that it means as Birchas Kohanim is a for Rishus. It's an optional matter. Other then it wird velen benchen. When you will want to bench, is Koise Baruch. This is what you should say. Azoy midam Naso. This is the language. Zoltir benchen. And the riber is the Torah glach meisif. So Torah at Emerlam. This is something as dosis at Sibu. It's a command. If that was the case, well, the Torah should have put it in an opposite order. Freedom Sibu Klole Birchas Kohanim. First, it should have said Omer Lahem. And then the Prat as Koise Baruch. Omer Lahem Koise Baruch. The Nusach HaBaracha, the language of Bracha, first the command, and then what the language is? Base. Nochmer. Even more. The Omer Lahem is nit. Not only is it an actual language, this seems to be a language which contradicts the bracha. The Nusach HaBaracha Kuli is B'lshon Yochid. The entire language of the bracha is Yochid. Yivarechecha Yishmerecha. V'necha v'goyim Yishmerecha Yoreh Elecha V'chonecha Yisra Elecha L'cha. Everything is in a singular way. Yivarechecha, you individually, Yishmerecha. Give you grace. So all these psukim are talking about un amor lahem is a lashon abn say to them. From them is Rashi's hechrech. So this is Rashi's proves to Rashi. Rashi learns from this. This is not talking about just the saying and the blessing that comes from the Kahanim. This is something which is important to them. So the Bnei Yisrael, the Shem listeners, they should all be listening. They're beating them. The bracha for the Kohanim is takib l'shen yochid. Das heißt, sie benchen jeden Iden b'fnei atzmai als yochid. The Idor, from the Kohanim bench, but on the other hand, Kohanim mention in an oifun sheyiu kulam shem. They bench in a way individually that they should all be listening. As alle andere, und der Yochid sollen herren, that all others should here, and the individual should hear, wie der Yochid wird gebenched als Kulam als Klal, that he is individually, but he's benched as part of the community. Und damit ist Movement, was Dafke noch dem allem, that only after all this stellt sich Rashi auf dem Wort Omer and sagt Leise Warche b'chipozen b'baholus, because now there's a whole confusing thing over here. Bald as Dav Zayin Lohem, it has to be that they should Kulam Shoimim Bald as an Alyon Zam. The bracha kavana fayedun yochid. It needs to be for each individual. Und the bracha v'kavana for klal. There has to be the bracha and the intent for the klal. So you're benching individually as part of the klal. Kenas gedim zayin. So this can cause, as the coins will bench b'chipos and keep shutri, that he should bench actually very quickly. As well by im zayin der chipos and the bracha is going to be a quick the bracha. First yivarecha benchen dich. Benching the person, gewendet zu jeden von them, kulam von atzmei, directed to each one in themselves, to all of them as individuals. Hayoy says, darf mekaven sein, euch, wegen dem zweiten und dritten Nieden, wegen kulam. Since he needs to have in mind about the other Jew, the third Jew, and all of them, and about all of them, she's going to say very quickly, she's going to say it so quickly to be able to keep everyone in mind. Ubaholus meloshun bohul bol. Bohul means confused and mixed up. To tumult to mished. He's going to be confused and mixed up inside the matter of kavonis. So that's the tool the shyness over here. Quickly to do it and mixed up. The Rebbe Rashi state Emer Moli. That's why we hear it says Emer Moli with a vav or dot dar zayin had goshen yichedis. Here needs to be a special emphasis, as a Zozayin de Amira b'milu shleimusa, that this saying should be completely and wholesomely, as a Zozayin b'kavono b'lev sholim, should be with intent and with a complete heart. If Dav Zayin mit kavona, what is the two languages? Kavona is Sefer Yed and Yochid, intention for each individual and for the klal. And yet it should be on Bilbo, nor believe Shalom should be with a whole heart, not a confused, not a mixed up heart. Das haste, this means that Kohen can doch trachten. The Kohen might think, as he bald that not bench na ganz Neidid, he has to bench Belas, a whole community of Jews. But yet didn't bench mit a Chelek for sein heart. Then he's going to bench each person with a part of his heart. Them sagt man him on ubelev shalom. That's what we say with a complete heart. As jeder Eid, dafür bench mit sein ganzer heart, that you have to bench every year with an entire heart. Ches, for jene shall teure with Pirush Rashi. So what is the wine of teure and Pirush Rashi? The zwei Dugmois was Rashi brings of Omer Lahem. These two examples that Rashi brings for Omer Lahem. And das is k'moi Zocher v'shomer. That's like Zocher v'shomer. Is nit blois masvid the Werter Omer Lahem. Not only do they explain the words Omer Lahem, though this is eich Hagdoma zu sein zu Birchas Kohanim. Hagdoma zu sein zu Birchas Kohanim. This is actually an introduction to the Kohanim for the Birchas Kohanim is k'moi Zocher v'shomer. If you verecha taish Rashi, she is baruchun b'chasecha, that your assets should be blessed. And if yishmerecha, verecha shem v'yishmerecha, zok Rashi yishmerecha should lo yovo yolecha shoydedim little mencha, so that robbers should not come to take your money. Rashi is meilich b'zeh v'azoydus by boss of the dom. As Rashi goes into a long, at length explanation how by human being when he gives you a gift, you can't protect it from the robbers, but the Eibishter gives you the Yishmerachon. If you give him a maton and then it's taken away, what kind of a benefit, enjoyment do you have matona if it's taken away? But the Eibishter is the one that gave you, and he's also guards it. What does Rashi have to give us not understood what this whole lengthy explanation? Since the robbers come and they take it from him, what kind of benefit does it have with this gift? This is something obvious. Why is Rashi to tell us this? What is Rashi adding? That if you get a gift that takes it away from you, then there's no benefit to the gift. But Rashi is the mid-madgish. Rashi emphasizes with this, as Yivarecha v'Yishmerecha, these two parts of this pasuk, they're not two separate blessings over here. One Yivarecha and Yishmerecha. But this is ein bracha. It's one bracha really. The bracha b'shteit. What is this one bracha? Consists she's baruch nechasecha, that your assets will be blessed in an oifen, in such a way as that Eibishter hid in the chosim, that Hashem protects these assets. For as there yishmerecha, on them yishmerecha ma'ano yesh dabei. If there is no yishmerecha, what kind of benefit is it to you? The yivarecha is kein hanoah, kein brachanit. It's not a bracha yivarecha without it. So basically, Rashi is telling you yishmerecha is part of the first bracha, because without this second bracha, there is no yivarecha. Similar is also by the other pasuk, the last pasuk, when it says Yisrael was in it gets favors in the Zachar, not two separate. Yisrael Hashem will carry his face to you and give you peace. Not ein bracha, it's not two separate things. Not ein bracha, but by state von achiv v'shlila. It consists of positive and the negative. When can Zayin be Yosem l'chasholim? When could there be peace? The positive b'shas is Yisrael Hashem ponav elecha. When Hashem carries his face to you, which means Yirbish Kaisa, when he holds back and he conquers his anger. The Rebbe is Rashi Mefarish, that was the Torah Zok. Rashi explained the Torah is Omer Lahem. Zogen the brachas, as the bracha is Kimoy Zocher Shomer. It's like Zocher Shomer. Zocher and Shomer for Shabbos and a Nitkin zwei besondere Sachen. Zocher and Shomer Shabbos are not two separate matters. Not any Indian, it's one matter. They were both said, Zocher, which is in the first commandments, Shomer in the second commandment were said in B'diburecha. When is there Zocher B'shleimus? When is it a complete remembering? Shas is the Shomer, when there is Shmira Shabbos. That's when the positive of the Zocher is when the Shmira Shabbos. Al-Derech Zeh Zokt Rashi is Omer Lahem. Similar Rashi is Omer Lahem. Yet the bracha was the Kohanim mentioned Eden. Every bracha that the Kohanim blessed Eden by state funachiyuv unashmira shlilam is the positive and also protection, protecting from the negative. So in ein inyan kanal, they are one aspect, as we said before, as the yivarechecha yizborchu nechasecha, when your assets are being blessed, is in eifon fun v'yishmerecha. It's in a way that you be protected. And who ha-nois and who ha-shomer, he's the giver and he's also the protector. Davke damot is the bracha, shleim is the kid. Only then is this blessing a wholesome one. And following this, Rashi explains, Amoir lahem, sheyu kulam shemim. You should all be listening. As the achone unachshore, as the bracha zol zayin b'eifin kozeh. What is the preparation and what gets them ready? The bracha should be in such a way. Ein bracha was versteht from chiyuv und shmira shlila, the one bracha that has the positive and the protection, the negation is b'shas by Eden. Is al derech zeh in the bracha v'kavon for the kohanim. When by Yidden and also in the blessing in Temple Kohanim, and Dod you made it news. You have these both movements. The chiyuv, you have the positive, the act is b'l'shein yochid. In the language of yochid, each one individually. Sai b'amiras kohenim, sai b'shmis b'hergish from the Yidden. The kohenim say it to each individual. Also, the feeling that the people have is that they get it individually for the idoch. But then you have also sheyu kulam shem, that all of them should listen. That yet the yochid that heard each individual senses As Megita Bracha zu a zweiten Eden und zu alle anderen, that you're also giving a bracha to another Jew and to all Jews genau. But this is kommt al yidei atnu for shlila. That comes through the movement of negation, the bittul, the subjugation of shlila from zayin mitzias, from your own mitzias, and to allow for another and for the community. And that time when it's all together, is does the clear to Avinu. That's the vessel to bless our Father. Bisu the klolos habracha, till we get the general bracha v'yosem l'chasholim, which is the main bracha, give you peace, v'sishogol keneged hakoil, which is equal to everything. Bisu the shleimus lazeh, to the wholesomeness of this. V'bias Mashiach tzidkenu, the coming of Mashiach tzidkenu, bas shalom shema, his name is shalom. Because that will zayin. At that point, it will be epich al amin kulam. Will turn around to all the nations, Sofa Brura, a very clear language, Likra Kulam B'Shem Hashem, they will all call the name of Hashem. Love the Shechem Echa, to work shoulder together, all together, the earth will be filled with knowledge of Hashem, Kamayim B'Chiyom B'Chasim, as water covers the ocean. And this is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Naso Tov Shin Lamed.